Hi everyone, and welcome to the Chat and Vibe series for the upcoming Vitality Festival, which starts on October the 31st. We're getting really excited now. We've got an incredible lineup of presenters and speakers and educators and inspirers who are all going to be coming to you for 9 days and presenting all tips on health and well-being. It's all online, it's a virtual experience, and it's free. And at the end, you'll be able to collect all the recordings for each of the sessions, so don't worry if you can't attend every single one of them. Today, we've got with us Steven Acuff, who is a nutritionist and one of our amazing speakers. Welcome, Steven. How are you?
Well, I'm well, and greetings from Stockholm, Sweden.
Yes, you're on the other side of town, which is incredible. I think you got stuck over there, didn't you?
That's right. COVID has got me locked down here.
Well, we're happy that you can still be with us no matter where you are. So, Steven, tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a nutritionist.
Well, when I was a young man, actually almost to the day 50 years ago, I attended a lecture about the macrobiotic way of eating, and it made a lot of sense to me. And then a meal was offered, and I tried the food, and it resonated with me. There's, your gut bacteria, I think, have a collective consciousness, and it resonates when you do the right thing. And I immediately felt like it was in balance. I felt a light feeling of really well-being. And I became curious. So I decided to try that for a week, and the difference was so amazing that here I am 50 years later talking about it. That was the very beginning. Then I just ate the food, and gradually people began to ask me to speak about this, because when you eat well, you just project a kind of health that other people who've got a certain level of awareness will pick up on and think, I'd like to know more about that. So I began doing public lecturing, and then gathering more and more personal information. And then I took part in a Zen Buddhist, what would we call it, an intensive seminar in Würzburg, Germany. And because the backgrounds of the macrobiotic food that I offer has its basis in Taoism and Buddhism. In other words, it's the philosophy of polarity between the yin and the yang. And one of the attendees at this conference was a man who owned 9 clinics in Germany, multimillionaire, and he was just starting up a new program in his 9th clinic he had just bought. And he listened to that, came up to me after the lecture and said, what you just said is what I want to have in my clinic. So he asked me if I would like to become the nutritionist for the alternative program. And I was happy to do that. And I did that for 6 years. We spent first a year testing it to see how it would work in a clinic situation. I was a cancer clinic, although not only cancer patients. So had a lot of experience with that. And then I went to the US and studied with the master of macrobiotics, Michio Kushi, who wrote a book called The Cancer Prevention Diet. And he trained me in especially the use of food for dealing with cancer. And then I began my 6-year work at the clinic, and learned a lot at that time. That was the best training you could have, because it was, right on there. There's a lot of theory about what is right, but when you work with patients who are in life and death situations, you really figured out quickly what has to go. And yeah, that was it. And then I began more and more getting invited everywhere. I've lectured in 27 countries around the world, and been on TV, radio, of course. I've written 2 books, both in German. No, actually, the second one's in English, called Eating the Wu Way for a Longer and Healthier Life. But I'm right now just finishing the German translation of that book. So then I'm going to start on the Swedish translation, so you can see that I'm quite busy.
Yeah.
And I've been doing a lot of personal counseling sessions over the years. Also, the incidence of cancer is just going up. Right now, 1 out of 2 men will get cancer in the course of his life, and 1 out of 3 women. Wow. So I'm now 75 years old, and I feel like I'm 55. And I know that I will not retire because the interest in what I do just keeps growing. So that, in a
Incredible.
nutshell, is how I came to where I am now. I have 4 children and 9 grandchildren, and all of them eat well. You know, they don't eat sugar, which is the most destructive food. They don't eat dairy food, which is also very disruptive to the immune system. And so I would say I'm really happy with the way things have gone in my life.
Fantastic. What a journey that you've been through.
Really, yes, especially that lecturing all over the world. You know, a bit South America, uh, every place but Africa, I think, and Antarctica.
Incredible. And you know, I think our immune system is so important in terms of the way we feel, in terms of our energy, in terms of the way we think. Tell us a little bit about the immune system and your philosophy on that.
Yes, that's a very key point you bring up here because 80% of the human immune system resides in the gut. It's called the microbiome. And when you think 80%, this is where you have your T cells, B cells, and the condition of the intestines pretty much decides the power of the immune system. And I'm sure this is why I've seen a lot of success over the years dealing with immune problems like cancer, because if you don't fix that problem, it's just not going to work. Uh, you know, there's a lot of speculation about how stress causes illness and cancer, and it's all part of that, but it's all biochemistry in the end. Stress affects the hormones in the body, so cortisol, the stress hormone, and it even affects the microbiome. So the key to a strong immune system is basically to be sure you take good care of your gut bacteria, and you do that by treating them well. You know, you may be aware of this, but we have 10 times more bacteria in our bodies than we do human cells.
Wow.
And so we're basically a bacteria conglomeration. And that's the story. So you learn, you chew well, you look at the food as part of your health and survival plan rather than just some way to fill your stomach. That's really it in a nutshell. The most important thing is to have enough minerals, vitamins to cover the needs of the immune system. For example, there are masses of immune system processes which are absolutely dependent on zinc and magnesium. And if these are lacking, then it doesn't matter how much you feel like you're in tune with yourself or that you've solved the conflict with your mother or whatever. If you don't have those things in order, your immune system can't be strong. It's just a biochemical fact. And so we try to do what's called holistic thinking. So you see body and mind as one. So when someone says, I think that stress is more important than food, we say, well, that's already dualistic thinking. You're separating body and mind because the way you eat affects the way you think.
Mm.
And the way you think affects the way you eat. So it's like the chicken and the egg. And instead of seeing what's more important than the other, we just put them all together and say, let's do what's necessary for health. And it really makes a difference because if you eat well, you will be free of the fear that's going around now with COVID. You know, people are afraid, and you know, I'm lucky being in Sweden because we don't wear masks. There hasn't been any lockdown of the economy. There's like a limit of 50 people in the room. You know, that's no big deal. And so I've hardly even noticed that this is going on. Whereas Melbourne is making the news even here in Sweden about having the most drastic lockdown in the world. And the question is that the way, or should we maybe look at strengthening the immune system to make it much less likely that the virus will be able to get a foothold, you know, which is what the whole thing is about.
Mm. And I've heard some people talking about the fact that because, you know, we are stuck at home primarily, I mean, we were allowed to go out a little bit, we're not as exposed to as many, you know, different bacterias and other viruses. So that in itself could potentially be weakening our immune system. Is there any truth to that?
Yes, that's right. I'm absolutely sure that's right. I think that the decision of the Victoria government for this radical lockdown has missed the whole point of human immunity, and we're seeing the results because you know, the lockdown has basically destroyed the Victoria economy, which is quite dynamic in Australia, and it's happening other places in the world, obviously. Uh, so they lock everybody up trying to get a lid on this. And while they're doing that, they actually make the problem worse, which is not unusual for government bureaucracies, of course. But the going, like taking enough physical exercise, you know, some people being locked at home don't get as much physical exercise as otherwise. When I'm in Melbourne, I live close to the beach in the southeast suburbs, Bayside, and I regularly go to the beach. It's about a 20-minute walk, and I go all the way down the beach. And when I was there in March and April, before I came back to Sweden, I was already in that first lockdown, and I noticed how it affected the amount of physical exercise I did. That it was less, and physical exercise is very important. You know, you get the exposure to other people, but also just the physical exercise itself makes you stronger, and the breathing. Now, if you have a really good health consciousness, you could still, you know, work out at home and do this and that. But if you live in an apartment and you don't have just to walk outside into your garden, a lockdown really can, on several levels, weaken the body. So, you know, it's a basic misunderstanding of human immunity, and it goes back to a very basic difference of opinion between Louis Pasteur and Claude Bernard. I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's a famous conflict between friends. Pasteur, who is focused on the microbe, you know, we have to get rid of the microbes, so we're going to pasteurize things. And Claude Bernard said, no, 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 the inner terrain, in other words, your body's physical condition is what decides. That will decide if you get sick. The microbe itself is harmless unless the body is receptive to it. And Claude Bernard was a man of few words and liked action. So he drank a glass of water with cholera bacteria to make his point. You know, how many of us would be willing to stand by our convictions that we drink a glass of water with cholera bacteria? But he was certain that his immune system was strong enough because he was health conscious at that time. He didn't just discard the microbe ideas of Pasteur. He said that's only half the story. And if we had more of the Claude Bernard attitude and less of the Louis Pasteur, we wouldn't be in this mess.
And so at the Vitality Festival, you'll be talking about nutrition and the immune system. So just tell us, without giving too much away, are there a few little simple things that you would recommend to everybody in this current environment? If we were going to just do one or two things, what would you like to say to people?
Yeah, that's the core of it. First of all, is don't eat sugar, because sugar immediately causes a weakening of the white blood cells, and our white blood cells are what protect us. I know a study showing that there's a reduction to about 20% of the white blood cell activity after, and there's about 80 times more vitamin C in our immune cells than there is in the surrounding fluid. So this shows us how important it is. And every time you eat sugar, you deny the body vitamin C, because sugar and vitamin C are very similar. And if the body has a choice, it'll take the glucose anytime. So the cells will choose glucose instead of vitamin C, so you take up less. So number one, don't eat sugar. And you have to read labels. There is sugar everywhere. Number two is don't take dairy food. That's also very important, because dairy food causes a confusion in the immune system, because the cow milk protein, or it could be goat milk protein, although cow milk protein is the worst, it creates a lot of unnecessary immune activity that should be spent protecting the body. So you get something called autoimmune reactions. And even if you don't have an immediate reaction to it, like breaking out in a rash or whatever, it still is a burden on the system. And then the other is to eat food that is not processed, so that you get all the vitamins. So you buy organic food, you get food that is not highly processed. And if people want to get a general rundown of what is on that list, they can go into my website, which is my name, stevenacuff.org, O-R-G. And just to get a taste of that, there's a whole list there with the foods that are good and the foods that are not. And so
Right.
when we get to the conference we're going to be doing, I'm going to go into detail about those things, and especially I'm going to talk about what we need to do to avoid becoming infected by COVID. And it's all right there. And I can't think of a subject that's more important right now. You know, and everyone's talking about it here in Europe. No one knows, you know, now we're getting back into the increases. Spain is going down in flames. And this doesn't have to be. You know, it's very important to get enough vitamin D. Now, in the Southern Hemisphere, you're coming out of the winter now. And so most people will have very low levels of vitamin D. So I'll be talking about the vitamin D, how much we need, at what time of the year, all of that. So it's going to be very practical, what I'm going to be talking about. And so we can roughly summarize it as two things. Avoid those things that will weaken your immune system, and take those things that will help your immune system.
It's a pretty easy formula, I think.
It is. Well, you know, there's a saying in Latin. It's called simplex sigillum veri. Simplex sigillum veri, and it means simplicity is the sign of truth.
Wow. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think for a lot of people right now experiencing the COVID situation, you know, we all can recognize how important our health is more than ever. I think people are really valuing it when their health has been compromised or they're worried about getting sick. I mean, I speak to people all the time, and that's really what people are focusing on. And I think everybody needs to pay attention to what they're putting in their mouth, to what they're taking in through all their senses, through their eyes, through their ears, through their nose. You know, the exercise that you're doing, your mental state, your emotional state, it all plays in to the immune system. So if you're wanting to find out more about your immune system, I can't recommend Steven enough. He is really amazing. His book is absolutely fantastic. And below I'll put a link so you can click on his website and have a look at the foods that he was talking about. If you haven't registered already, please click on the link below as well to register. Steven, thank you so much for being part of our festival. We're so happy that you're one of our incredible speakers, and thanks for being part of the interview today.
Oh, thank you. Looking forward to the festival.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.